It is Tuesday, April 23rd, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I am Matt Modi, and I have 4 NBA player props for tonight's NBA betting slate. So I got 4 plays total. I have 2 overs, 2 unders, 2 plus money bangers, 2 minus money bangers, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. But before we get into today's picks, let's do a recap from yesterday, which ended up being a fine to below fine type of day. I went 2-2 on all 4 plays that I gave out. But because of the odds, we were down yesterday, down 0.42 units. I had Brunson over 30.5 points. The shot attempts were there once again, but the efficiency was also horrible once again. But he took 30 shots. He had 9 free throw attempts. If you're telling me that happens more often than not, Brunson probably will go over 30.5 points. But he didn't yesterday, so that goes down as an L. And then for Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein had the game that I thought Mitchell Robinson was going to have, so he wasn't even close on that one, just a bad read. But we were able to cash out D'Angelo Russell over 2.5 made 3-pointers, and LeBron James over 8.5 assists as well. So that brings our total profit on the Splash Zone on the entire season. We're up a little bit over 113 units, which is pretty good. I wanted to get to the 115 unit mark of profit yesterday, but because the first 2 L's in the Sixers-Knicks game, it wasn't in the cards. Let's hope we can get over the 115 unit of profit mark tonight. If you are not already, I would appreciate it if you could like the video, comment, subscribe. And then the last thing that I'll mention before I get into today's picks is that I do have a dub club. With how the NBA, the odds have been coming out so much earlier than normal, I've been sending out plays pretty early. So a couple plays that you see today, I sent out a couple days ago, and on some of them, not every single time, but on some of them, we are getting better odds. So Dub Club is where I send out everything immediately when I decide what a play is. It's only $5 a month to get everything texted to you. So if you're interested in that, just check out the link in the description of the video as well as the pinned comment. Now that's enough of that. You're only as good as your most recent bangers. So let's see if we can splash around and get wet today. Starting in the Mavs versus Clippers game, I'm taking Luca Donic over 33.5 points, minus 112 odds at DraftKings. So this was a play that I did send out to my Dub Club at 32.5. Those of you that were on the Dub Club and were able to lock that in did get a pretty good price. As of right now, obviously it's best offered at the 33.5 number at minus 112 at DraftKings, which I would still recommend playing at that number. So Luca ended game 1. He had exactly 33 points. So he did go over the 32.5 number that I gave out. He would have hooked their 33 number. But despite the fact that he did go over the 32.5 number, it was not a good game that you'll see from Luca. His jumper just wasn't falling. He did not shoot efficiently from the floor at all, especially from 3-point range. And I'm basically just betting that's something that's not going to continue. And with how good Luca is, he had a bad shooting night and still scored 32 points, which just shows A, how good he is, and B, how easy it is for him to rack up a bunch of points. He shot 11 of 26 from the field, and he shot 4 of 12 from deep. If you just look at those 2 numbers, you're going to say that doesn't look horrible. But really, he started doing his damage in the second half after a horrible, mostly second quarter. His first quarter was actually pretty good. He didn't score at all in the second quarter. He started the game 1 of 7 from 3-point range, and he was missing shots around the rim or close to the rim or fadeaways in the paint that he normally makes. So like I said, he ended up salvaging the night overall if you just look at his raw stats. But watching the game, I knew that I was going to want to target Luca in the next game because, A, the Mavericks lost. They got blown out in game 1. They only made this final score respectable, but they got blown out in that game. And that was with him having a pretty brutal shooting game. And if you just look at Luca's playoff game log, and specifically his playoff game log against the Clippers, which I understand we're going back a decent ways to like the bubble and then the year after the bubble, but he's had 14 playoff games in his career against the Clippers. He's gone over 32.5 points that I gave out on my Dub Club in 8 of those 14 games. And actually 5 times he went over 40 or more points. So the ceiling potential is there. I was debating laddering him to 40 plus points, but scoring has been a little bit down. In the playoffs, the refs are calling the games not nearly, they're letting a lot more go. So the ceiling potential for a lot of guys isn't quite there this year, at least to start the season. The playoffs, so we'll see how things go. He might blow up for 40 points, and I'm going to be kicking myself for not laddering it, but I'm just going to stick with the 33.5 points as our first play. Next up, we're going to the Suns versus Timberwolves game, and I'm taking Devin Booker over 24.5 points, minus 110 odds at DraftKings. Similar to the Luca Doncic one, this is absolutely Another fade of recent results in betting on a player who struggled from a shooting perspective in game one to have a better game in game two. Fading recent results is something that I did in last year's playoffs that worked really, really well. I had a really, really good playoffs last year. As of so far, through one day of fading recent results, we went 1-1 yesterday. Brunson did not cash. D'Angelo Russell did cash. So it still remains to be seen for this season if the process is going to work as well as it did last year. But the logic makes sense to me, and it kind of fits within my betting ethos. So I like backing Devin Booker in this game. He only scored 18 points in game one, which 18 points isn't great. He also shot 5 of 16 from the field. That's a very bad number for Devin Booker. And I know that the Timberwolves have a tough defense, so it's not like he's going to just get a bunch of easy looks at the bucket. But Devin Booker has shown the ability in his career to score on tough defenses. I expect him to turn it around. And we've seen him absolutely show out in the playoffs in his career, where he's historically played really well and generally against pretty good defenses. Even if you include this year's game one, in which he went under, he has scored 25 or more points in 10 of 12 playoff games, which means he did it in 10 of 11 games last year. We're getting a pretty massive discount on Devin Booker's points from where it is priced at right now at 24.5 compared to where it was priced at last year when it was in the 30s. And I know last year was a different Suns team, a totally different situation, but we just have the historical evidence and precedent that Devin Booker can score against tough defenses and play really well in the playoffs. So I think we're getting a discounted line because he did not shoot well in game one. And that was a Kevin Durant game. Kevin Durant is an amazing player who very well might go off once again, but I like the value better for Devin Booker. So that's what we're rocking with for our first play. Next up, we have 2 unders, both of them plus money bangers. The first one being in the Pacers versus Bucks game, and we're taking Damian Lillard under 6.5 assists plus 105 odds at bet 365. So now we're starting to get to these unders, which I admit I should look at unders more than I do. When I start my research process, I start with looking at the overs that I like. And if I find enough overs that I like, I don't look as much at the unders as I should. So I'm starting to try and get back to betting unders, which I was doing over the course of the regular season, just not that much to end it. So starting with this Damian Lillard assist under, he ended the game one with 3 assists. That's not necessarily the only reason why I like his under once again tonight. More importantly, he had 11 potential assists. And if you're telling me 11 potential assists and he has to get 7 actual assists, that's a pretty unlikely hit rate and conversion rate, however you want to call it, from assists to potential assists, especially when you consider the fact that the way the Bucks play offense, specifically with no Giannis, a lot of those assists are not coming off of easy looks around the rim. Now, if he kicks it out to a wide open shooter, yeah, that's going to be a high percentage shot. Not as high percentage of a shot as a lob to Giannis, right? And if you look at Dame's stats this year that he's played without Giannis, this is including game one. He's played in 9 games this year without Giannis. He's only gone over 6.5 assists in 3 of those 9 games. Now, in those 3 games, he did have somewhat blow up assist games. He had 13 against the Raptors. That was back in November. 16 against the Suns back in March. And then 9 against the Magic. So those 3, he did go over by a pretty decent amount. But yeah, every other game, the remaining 6, he went under 6.5 assists. And against the Pacers specifically is not a matchup where I would want to target Damian Lillard assists. He has played 5 games against them this year. He's only gone over 1 time. That was in the first game these 2 teams played where he had 7 assists. But he did that on 10 potential assists. So again, that's an unlikely conversion rate. That is not something that you can rely on game over game. And in those 5 games, he's only had 9.6 potential assists. Now, yes, Giannis did play in those first 4 games, but Damian's assists, as I mentioned, he has a better hit rate in games that he plays with Giannis than in games that he plays without him. So if anything, it should be even better, the fact that he played those games with Giannis. And this is also a play based on how the Pacers play defense, their style of defense, which generally does not lead to a ton of assists to point guards. If you look at the entire season, they gave up literally the fewest assists per game to point guards in the entire NBA on the entire season. And if you look specifically at Damian Lillard's playmaking style, according to Courtside Pal, the Pacers give up the 6th fewest assists per game, specifically to Dame's playmaking style. And even if your argument is, well, Damian Lillard went off in game 1, they're going to play him differently. He scored 35 points in the first half. So if your argument is they played him differently in the second half, he only had 1 assist in the second half. So I still like riding with his assist under in this game. I think it's a really good one. That's our third play. Last up, we're going back to the Mavs versus Clippers game, and I'm taking James Harden under 2.5 made 3-pointers, plus 125 odds at bet365. This is immediately another extremely aggressive fade of recent results with James Harden, who we saw blow up with 6 3-pointers in game 1. And I was watching that game. Once I saw him have a great shooting game from deep in game 1, I immediately knew I was going to fade the ever-living crap out of him in game 2. As a Sixers fan, as a basketball fan, I've seen this movie. We've seen this movie with James Harden a million times. He is capable of having blow-up games in the playoffs. What he is incapable of doing is doing that on a consistent basis. Now, I understand last year was a different team, whatever. We've seen this throughout James Harden's career. But just looking at last year, he made 3 or more 3-pointers in 4 of 11 playoff games. So right off the bat, that's not a great hit rate. But every single time he made 3 or more, he immediately followed that up with a horrible shooting game after that. And we can go through it. So game 1 against the Nets last year, that was the Sixers' first series. 7 of 13 from deep. Pretty good game. The next game after that, he shot 2 of 8. Not great. Then in game 3, he went over 2.5 made 3-pointers, shooting 3 of 7 from deep. That's not blowing up. That still would have cashed the 3+ made 3-pointers. After that, in game 4, he went 2 of 5 from deep. So every other game in the Nets series, that was a 4-game series. Now we go to the Celtics series, which was a 7-game series. In game 1, without Joel Embiid, he won the game for the Sixers. He shot 7 of 14 from deep. He was incredible in that game. He followed that up in game 2 with an 0 of 6 day from 3. And then he followed that up with a 2-7 game in game 3. So he cashed it in game 1, missed it in games 2 and 3 with horrible shooting games. Then in game 4, we see another blow-up game from James Harden. 6 of 9 from deep, scored 40 points, won the game for the Sixers. Great game. After that, game 5 through game 7, he did not, again, hit 3 3-pointers. In game 5, he went 1 of 2, didn't even shoot. In game 6, he went 0 of 6. In game 7, he went 1 of 5. Again, I know it's a different team in a different situation, but this is a movie that we've seen time and time again with James Harden. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's just him being older in his career. He can't physically get it up the same way he used to when he was younger, especially only having 1 day off in between. Regardless of what the answer, what the reason why, I'm gladly fading James Harden in this game as my 4th and final pick. And that's all we got for now. 4 plays, 4 bangers for today's NBA betting slate. If I end up deciding to play more, I'll send it out to my Dub Club first, and I'll post it on Twitter as well, like I did with LeBron over 8.5 assists yesterday. Appreciate everybody who has tuned in to this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And then if you're interested, check out my Dub Club for only $5 a month to get everything sent directly to your phone. Appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.